And our first review of the day is going to be for the for the show Ahsoka, which is the new Disney Plus Star Wars show. As I said before, a lot of people go like, "I'm sick of Star Wars. I don't see any more Star Wars stuff. I don't see. If I see another lightsaber, I'm going to jump off a roof. If I see another one of that." So, but hey, here we go again. And with these Star Wars shows, it's been kind of hit or miss for me. I sing the praises all the time of Andor. I think Andor is the best thing that Disney's ever done with Star Wars. And then you have some that are really kind of just, for me, just really bad. One of them being Boba Fett, which I thought was really, really bad. I thought that was the worst Disney Plus Star Wars show they've done so far. Even this new season of Mandalorian, which we talked about, which Chris came on for that as well. I thought was kind of just was mixed for me on the lower end of not being so good. Kenobi, I was very much disappointed by. So I think it needs a win. These Star Wars shows, it needs kind of a win recently. And Radiant from Maturity said, yeah, he described it best. Boba Fett was like a bad fan film. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But with this Ahsoka series, kind of a lot of anticipation, hype built around it because Ahsoka is a really popular newer character that's appeared in Star Wars. She first appeared in Clone Wars. It's a Dave Filoni. This is his baby that he created with Ahsoka. She kind of blew up from Clone Wars, and then she also made appearances in Rebels. So in this show, in this series of her own, Ahsoka, you'll see a lot of characters from Rebels, and I'm going to be discussing with Chris because he's seen Rebels and Clone Wars and all that, whether or not you need to have that context for this series. But this is an 8-episode series. It's typically a lot of what these Disney Plus shows are. And it's dealing with a new threat that's kind of emerging in the galaxy that Ahsoka has to face. And we see in these first 2 episodes that they're also trying to look for Ezra Bridger, who is a main character in Rebels. There's a map to him. And for some reason, Star Wars, they always got maps. It's always like all the thing wasn't that the thing in Rise of Skywalker also?
It was. Like, the dagger.
They had a map, and there's always with these maps. But yeah, so they have this map there and trying to search for Ezra Bridger. You also have these. I don't think they ever say that they're Inquisitors in this show, do they? But that's what they are, right? Do they say? They don't say Inquisitors yet.
There's one. I don't think they said it yet, but there's one Inquisitor in the show. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you have the Sith. One is played by Ray Stevenson, which, by the way, rest in peace to him. He recently passed away. And then after the first episode, you'll see, to our great friend Ray, who is one of the Sith people here, one of the 2 Siths that we see here. Very good opening sequence, by the way, where they just basically slaughter a bunch of rebels that you see. So that was pretty good. So they presented kind of also an opposing force of having this map and also chasing it as well. So it's that kind of feeling of who's going to get there first. I'm going to pass it on to Chris to get his thoughts on it because, like I said, he is a big fan of this type of stuff and he has a lot of knowledge of this. So, Chris, what were your thoughts on the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka?
That was a great lead up. I'm gonna just piggyback. Ray Stevenson is Balin Skull, and his apprentice is Shin Hati. And I saw this on Twitter. It was really cool. Dave Filoni, fun fact, he loves wolves. So in a lot of his Star Wars stories, you'll see a wolf pop up in some thematic way. Skull and Hati are in Norse mythology. They're wolves that chase the sun and moon until they collide and cause Ragnarok. But they're the ones. It's not for sure yet if they're actually Sith or Dark Jedi or just Rogue Jedi, but they're looking for the map that everyone's looking for, kind of like this MacGuffin that both sides are after. It's a map that leads to wherever Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn went to at the end of Rebels, where Ezra summoned the Purrgil or the space whales. Spoiler alert for the finale of Rebels. To latch on to Thrawn's Star Destroyer, and these space whales have the ability to go into hyperspace. So they latch on with their tentacles and they launch Thrawn and Ezra into the unknown regions. And now, the map you see that leads to one galaxy to another, that's where they are in the unknown regions. So that's really cool. Do I think people need to have watched Clone Wars and Rebels? I don't think you need to watch those shows. It definitely makes the overall experience more enjoyable and special because you'll catch everything. Like Clancy Brown as Ryder Azadi from Rebels, and also the OG voice of Lex Luthor from Superman the animated series, and mostly of the DC animated shows. Um, and the mural that's painted in the background, that's straight from Rebels. They even painted in the same animation style. Um, but all you need to know, and I'm grateful for this. This is the first time we've had like an opening crawl in a very long time, and that opening crawl I think is very vital. It helps anyone who does not watch the shows just understand what they're about to see, and that's the beauty of Star Wars. I think you can just jump in here and still appreciate it and not be too lost.
Mm. Yeah, I did appreciate that they do an open crawl at the beginning there, of to introduce you to a lot of elements that are going to be going on. Dusk, what are your thoughts on the first two episodes of Ahsoka?
Uh, let's see. I think I'm kind of in the opposite boat of where you are. I respect a lot of what Dave Filoni did for the help with the Clone Wars and establishing a lot of these aspects, even if some of his ideas weren't necessarily in congealment with the rest of Star Wars and canon. I did acknowledge and I respected Clone Wars, at least for its attempt, especially it started off more as a kid's show, but was able to go into darker aspects of the canon and work within it. Rebels had felt, unfortunately, was too kid friendly, and then eventually they tried to do the same Clone Wars, but by that point, that it was too little, too late. Uh, from what limited knowledge I know about Rebels, it seems like a very paint by numbers show at first that then slowly over time kind of got a little bit more detail. Although I don't think wolves and space whales are necessarily should make sense in a Star Wars dynamic. I think that's a little too fantasy even for Star Wars, which usually has a little more grounding than that. Even with the supernatural and the force aspects of it, I think that makes it a little too literal, which loses some of its mystery, but that's a personal feeling. I'm going to say it right off the back. While that is a decent fight moment, uh, I have no idea why they made the decisions they made. In the very beginning, the captain goes, "Why am I going to make? Why I'm going to take this bluff? I'm going to take their bluff. Let's let them onto my ship. I don't trust that they're Jedi. Let me let them on my ship." If he's changing their bluff, he would just not have them be on the ship and aim all weapons to that small ship. And what are the Jedi going to do? They're going to fight back on a far smaller ship and die. Even with the Force, you can't. There's only some limitations. Or if and when he did let them be on the ship, why didn't he lock down the entire area so that they're on their side? And if they don't give the answers I want to give, I throw you out into space. It's just so many moments of foolishness throughout the very beginning, and let me know right away. Oh, we're gonna have this level of writing. We're just gonna have this level of just not really thinking about it, but it looks cool. So F it, let's go. That extends, unfortunately, to I think the way they kind of portray a lot of this episode. A lot of these first two episodes are very slow. They're very slow. A lot of sometimes not talking, a lot of monotone dialogue, a lot of characterization between characters that if you did watch the Rebel show, I think you kind of will be a bit disappointed because enough time has passed. They don't really dive into what these characters have kind of been up to. Just we got to do this thing, and you're mad at me for some reason, and we're not really going to go into it. You just got to trust me, all right? Oh, then you did the thing that I thought you weren't going to do, and then you did it anyways. And that causes a problem later on. They're like, oh, they'll get over it. Maybe, but maybe if you hadn't done the thing that they didn't want you to do, you wouldn't be in this position. That comes down very much to the issue. But I'll let you speak, Chris. And you, Josh. That's just from the beginning. That's just from the very beginning. I was like, oh Lord.
Let me read this real quick and see if you guys have an answer to this. Radiant for Maturity says, I don't know if it bothered any of you guys, but there's a scene where a character says you can't leave with this thing and then immediately leaves someone in a room.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's many moments in this where I tell you not to do something, you're going to do the opposite anyways, and then I leave you to do it, and then I'm going to be act all, oh, shucks. That's Sabine. always doing her thing. She's a rebel without a cause. Oh boy. And it's if anything, she's a Mandalorian, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep,
Sabine is a
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
She's a Mary Sue Mandalorian who also wielded the Darksaber for a time, right? And she also created the symbol for the Rebel Alliance, even though that's not at all in the original canon, and even extra new canon that they did with Starkiller. But it is, I guess, with new canon. And she paints her armor. She's like an artist, right?
Mhm.
And then why wouldn't she be there for her coronation with her friends? Like, she clearly cares about them, but she doesn't show up. And then she's just going to leave. Why would you show up anyways and then leave? Just to have a scene where two starfighters are going to, hey, listening to space punk rock? I didn't know Star Wars had punk rock because it's in an alien language.
Yeah, well, hey, that's some new lore. Yeah.
Alien punk rock. I'm okay. I'll break down to the characters. I think Rosario Dawson as an actress, I think she's pretty solid. I think, unfortunately, none of the spunk or characteristics of Ahsoka is at all shown in this. She's very monotone, very blasé, almost acts like a Jedi master, but the whole point of her leaving in Clone Wars and learning what she did is that she wouldn't lose those aspects of her character, even as she mastered the Force. She didn't like the way the Jedi ran things, that they didn't feel attachment, they didn't do these things. She didn't gel with that, so that's why she left and never quite finished her training. Technically, she's not even a full Jedi Knight. She's not even a full Jedi Master because there's no Jedi Order anymore. But that being said, I think she's just not given a lot. She's just, I'm going to say this here, and then I'm going to do this. And then another character's going to have a line, and they're going to be quippy. And then I'm going to respond by not really doing much. And then Sabine, I'm sorry, she's just insufferable. Every decision she makes is the wrong one, and you just go, shouldn't you be more experienced than this? You're not. What was she? She was like 16 in the Rebel show or something. Yeah. She's like 8 years later. You can't be pulling this kind of crap. And then in the in between time, I just learned about this because I did some research. She's a Jedi now. All of a sudden, that was trained under Ahsoka, and they don't go into the details. They're like, oh, we tried, and then that didn't happen. I don't know if that necessarily, I don't know the character enough to know she would want to do that, but she's Mandalorian. I imagine she would have been a little more disappointed to just give up on not wanting to be trained. Mandalorians don't traditionally just give up on something they start. But that's, I don't know. That's a whole character thing, and I don't know, but I just, in these 2 episodes, a lot of it spends time with puzzles. And it feels like, the show felt like I was playing a video game that I wasn't playing, or I got to go through this plot thing and watch this cutscene. And this is my first time around a cutscene I will skip in the future because I don't need to watch it. And then go ahead.
Lucky Dog Podcast, he agreed with you. He said she too old to be playing.
I mean, to be fair with Ahsoka's character, by that point she would be in her at least around the same age.
Oh, no,
Sabine, she is too old to be playing the games that she's playing, especially later where it's like, we missed you at the ceremony. She's like, oh, was that yesterday? Bitch, you were there. You were there. And he literally said, oh, she was here just a moment ago. Where did she go? You were there. You were going to give a speech and then you bailed. And then you tried to act all cool about it later. It's like, these were your friends. Don't you care?
That highway moment, Radiant for Maturity said, that scene on the highway made me think of the opening sequence of Kirk in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. Yeah, that's what immediately I thought of. Because the music, it did kind of sound like Beastie Boys at first.
Yeah.
I
was not a fan of that scene either.
Yeah. So to talk about the cast, as you mentioned above, and I'm going to get Chris's opinion on there, if these people really, are great live action adaptations of the characters from the show. So you have Rosario Dawson, who's Ahsoka Tano, who made her first live action appearance in The Mandalorian. Then you also have Natasha Liu Brazardio, who plays Sabine. You have Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Hera, who, by the way, to anybody else, does she not look really fucking freaky to anybody else? Like, it just, it's kind of, I think it's the eyes.
It's the eyes, the hair, the disheveled hair, and they have put eyeliner underneath her eyes, like eyeshadow.
Yeah, it just looks really super fucking weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's a piercing
It's mostly
blue.
the super translucent eyes, those super translucent blue eyes. That can work in animation, but when you actually see it in real life, you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So with these characters, Chris, what's your opinion? Are they good translations from the cartoon to live action?
I would say they are a clear translation. That doesn't always work for everyone, but for me at least, it is clear that all three of these actresses sat down with Filoni. They watched some of the episodes. They talked about the character because I think they're doing a good job with the mannerisms and like the cadence of the speech. Like it does. The series is a clear continuation of Rebels, and not everyone liked Rebels. I think Rebels has a pretty niche audience. A lot of people couldn't get down with the with the animation style and like the needle thin um, lightsabers and the Inquisitor helicopter
oh my god.
lightsabers and the Purrgil like space whales. Space whales is where a lot of people do jump off like okay like that's enough like and wolves that like that are like
That time travel and the
that,
space between
that have
space.
yeah exactly Rebels takes big swings with like spirituality and like the mysticism of Star Wars. Dusk, how do you feel about real quick
Hmm.
the Bendu? How do you feel about that?
Bendu.
Yeah, like, the big creature who's like the embodiment of like the middle. He's not the dark or light. Did you see that part?
I'm. I don't recall that enough to
Okay,
really give
okay.
a firm opinion.
Okay. Um, but yeah, for me, I really liked Rebels, so I think they are doing the actresses are doing a great job with continuing where the characters left off. Even though it is like an 8 year gap, and there should be some growth and maturity in Sabine, it will be a big disappointment if they never explore the tension between Ahsoka and Sabine. Because what I'm seeing is Ahsoka continuing where Kanan left off with teaching Sabine how to wield a saber in the first place. She's a Mandalorian; she knows how to use weapons, but a sword or a laser sword is a little different, especially the dark saber, which you have to kind of bond with in order to wield. So it'll be a major issue if they don't explore the what happened between Ahsoka and Sabine. There's a lot of tension in these first 2 episodes that even I don't know where it's coming from. So hopefully that's explored in like going forward in the next 6 episodes.
Yeah. And I was going to bring that up because, like I said, start off these first 2 episodes. It's been an 8 year gap. I've only seen, like I said, a little bit of Rebels. I haven't finished it. And seeing these characters kind of reconnect again, you do feel that tension that's between them, especially between Ahsoka and Sabine. Where that tension is coming from. I was going to ask you, like, where is this all coming from? Because again, I feel like you need some extra context to that and their
Mm-hmm.
relationship. You can tell that these are people obviously who've known each other for a minute and for a long time. But as far as where all that kind of the complexity of their relationships, I think you need further context by watching the show and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with Dust's point. And I kind of also want to get your opinion, Chris, because yeah, I mean Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, it seemed like she had a little bit more personality when I saw her in Mandalorian when she popped up there a little bit. Here it seems she's kind of very more monotone, more a little bit more stern, a little bit more serious, reserved emotionally than what I've seen her previously and other things, and so that was kind of a shock. And then I do kind of feel like a lot of people are that kind of way, and I don't know if it's maybe because like I said, it's been such a long time, and these characters are kind of, it's that awkward thing when you haven't seen maybe a friend in a minute, and you're trying to reconnect again, and it's going to be that awkward moment. So I don't know if that's the thing. Um, but to move on to I guess some other things other than characters here. Good looking show. I'd say the effects look really good. It's not something like Kenobi, which I don't know what budget they were working with that show, but this is a good looking show. The budget, the money's here, and they spent a lot of money here. So I think that's very good. And the effects there. The how do you all feel about the action of it and the look of the show too? Get your opinion on that. Because there were some lightsaber battles here. Did you think choreography there looked pretty good? But Dust, what's kind of your opinion on the look of the show and then the action choreography of the show?
Uh, the action choreography honestly is frustrating because a lot of times with it, I can tell that they've learned a lot of the styles and how to hold on to the lightsaber and use it. But this is something I've noticed throughout a lot of live action Disney shows. Unlike in the original, even in the original trilogy, the lightsaber battles were never the focal point of the story. They were there to be an illustration of what was happening in the scene. Arguably, the best one is in Empire, where Darth Vader's toying with Luke, and he does so with only having to use one hand, while Luke is using both hands and swinging wildly and trying to do his best. But the main thing, even in Return to Jedi, is that they're trying to hit each other. They're trying to kill each other. And even when you're faking it, you can't fake not trying to hit the targets. A lot of the choreography, I think this was started somewhat in the prequels, but at least it was had better choreography with the balance and movement. Every time I watch a fight, I shake my head because they're just tapping swords. They're just tapping swords really elegantly, never actually trying to go for a body blow until it has to happen. There's so many moments, even early on, the very first fight between Ahsoka and this robot thing. She has him pinned upwards. All she needs to do is take another hand, slice horizontally, cut in half. There's so many movements in choreography that would end a fight very quickly and would feel more visceral and more on point, and it would make the action moments much more intense because you can feel the realistic nature of these fights, if that's what they were trying to go for. And I just don't feel it. I just don't feel it at all. Secondarily, I don't feel that the lights. I have for a while now. I felt like this lightsaber has just been a pointless weapon now, because people can just get stabbed by it and just not die, apparently. And that's not true just for that's true for the Obi-Wan show. That's true for other shows. Nobody gets decapitated. Nobody loses hands. Nobody loses arms. Nobody loses legs. And I know this is Disney. They acquired it. They're maybe not going to do that, but if the original Star Wars from the very first movie can do that, why can't you? Having consequences for a battle makes a battle much more intense. And I never felt at all at any moments in any of these fights, aside from the ones that I knew the bad guys were going to do bad things, I didn't feel any danger for any characters because I knew they're not really going to kill them off, even if they pretend that they do. And to me, then that's a failure of any fight scene. Because if I'm not afraid for the characters or I'm not worried about the fight, then it's not going to happen. The best moment I can even recall from the most recent Star Wars was actually in Rebels, and it had nothing to do with the Rebel show, was when Darth Maul fought Obi-Wan. It was like 2 minutes, less than 2-minute fight. And that's all it needed to be. It could have been a little bit longer, but I liked the quick visceralness of it. Okay, then it's over. After all that, there's just that's all the character needed to be and all they needed to do, and that was it. But it meant more, and you remember it more because it felt so visceral. Could have gone even for like a full minute of actual back and forth, and then bam, done. That's all it needed to be. But the fact that it was so quick and to the point had it much better and allowed a much more visceralness to it that I think is sorely lacking. I think the sets are actually not bad for the most part. I think the sets actually are pretty good for the most part. My biggest problem is they don't feel lived in. They feel very quickly set up, but there's not a lot of junk around. Everything's kind of a little too perfect. Star Wars always had like junk gear. Everything felt more lived in. The seats, the thing day to day, the outerwear, everything felt lived in. Everything felt like we were in World War II, or everything felt like it was. If you were inside of a ship, it felt like a pilot seat. It felt like a pilot ship. A bunch of junk laying around, a toolbox, a couple things here and there. It felt lived in. And you can argue that it's because, well, it's been a couple of years since the end of the Empire. It's like, well, this should be a reconstruction. There should be things going here. There should still be farmers. There's a very empty highway. There's no other traffic. There's no other, even if everyone's at the ceremony, there's no farmers in the outfields gathering corn or gathering whatever food they're gathering. There's no cars flying in the city or other things that they had to do or other monitors. And that kind of gets you, even with the ancient city that you first see into. Well, it looks nice, stationary. There should have been more debris, more things collapsed, fallen over, more scarring on the landscape. And I know they have a limited budget that they're trying to do, but just get some foam. Go get some foam. Watch how the Lord of the Rings crew did it. Honestly, just look up on YouTube how they did it, and you'll get tons of ideas on how to make something with a limited budget and make that look pretty dang good. I just I felt like I was watching money. I could see the money on the screen, but at the same time, I could also see the cheapness in the way it was utilized.
Chris.
Um, I think out of all the live action Star Wars shows, next to Andor, I'd say Ahsoka uh, feels and looks the most cinematic. I found the Book of Boba Fett had its moments for me, but that definitely did feel the most like this is Star Wars. You know, some things look great and some things looked very fan made. um, sorry, but yeah, I think visually Ahsoka looks great. The lightsaber duels, I will agree they do kind of resemble the same thing that people said about the prequels. The lightsaber duels kind of felt like a dance. They felt too rehearsed, and when it's too rehearsed, it doesn't feel like a natural fight where you can see them actually going for body blows. I do agree with Dusk there that the there's a lot of extra stuff to make it look pretty, make it fancy. Ahsoka definitely does extra stuff that you know at her level she could just go for the kill and make it fast, but she does a lot of fancy over the head flip, you know, because she's Ahsoka.
Or that tiny jump she did on the second episode. Like I know she's like 40 something plus now, so she can't do the jumps that as a young person can. But I was just like, not the wide angle. Maybe that wasn't the best. You know, she can't do the young jumps. I wanted to ask you a question, Chris. And you too, Josh, real quick before
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Hmm?
When there's a moment when something is stolen from Sabine's place and she has to go down an elevator, was your first thought maybe, oh, she went back to go because she has items, there's Mandalorian stuff. Maybe she
Mhm.
has a jetpack she can use to get down there
Mhm.
quickly. She
Mhm.
already has a pistol or a blaster in hand. She could beat him down there before I get to it. But instead, she goes back for a lightsaber, and I was like, why? Why would you go back just for that? I mean, you could have just like you already have a weapon. You could just pick up the thing and just get down there real quick. And but because they needed to have a lightsaber fight happen,
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
presumably
Yeah.
she also took the elevator down and waited, so she had to wait for it to come back up and then took it down. And we had a cut
Yeah.
from that. I think
Yeah.
I think a lot of problems with this is just the dynamicism of the action and the storytelling is that they don't connect those dots. You just have cuts that happen, but there's no logical pending on why they happen. Just that they have to happen because the story has been written.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties into the fact that the Sabine Wren we're introduced to in this show is not the Sabine Wren we're used to. She has her hair's grown all the way out and she's not wearing her armor. That's never the way we've seen her. She's always had the short pixie cut, bob cut, and she's always wearing her Mandalorian armor. So I know this is like Dave Filoni's way of saying this isn't the same Sabine we left. She's a little different. But what's the purpose of that? Why is she different? And obviously not for very long because by the end of episode 2 she cuts her hair, puts the armor back on, and then they recreate the final shot, the final sequence of Rebels. She taps the mural and goes off with Ahsoka to go find Ezra, or you know the mission with the maps.
Okay.
Yeah,
So where this show is with the first, so it's kind of like catching up to. It's basically recapping Rebels, basically like the ending of Rebels, basically.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And
interesting.
so it does pick up where Rebels left, but there's like a what do you call it like a prologue kind of thing, a bit of a prologue. The first 2 episodes kind of serve as
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure what was like thematically what's the point of introducing this version of Sabine just
Mm-hmm.
to you know
If
bring
they're
her
just going to
back.
go back to the way it
Yeah,
was, it
yeah,
it feels like they could have just skipped both episodes and just shown up in media res, and we would have gotten the same amount of context. They're
mhm,
like, "Well, we need to find a map. I'm here. I'm doing this," and then she's with Ahsoka, and they've been looking for a while, and
yeah,
things have been going on for quite a while, and she still has her Mandalorian armor, and I don't know, maybe her hair has grown up, but she's put it in like a wrapped up tail or whatever style it is
tied in a
now.
bun, yeah,
bun, and you're like, okay, so time has passed, and she's grown up quite a bit, and she's done other things along the side, but there's been no lead, and then finally they get a lead. Can you ask me this question then, Chris? Why do they need an ancient map to find where Thrawn is?
Because he's in the unknown regions, and I guess that's ancient knowledge.
But
that's my best bet. Yeah.
But like Thrawn is a guy,
Mhm.
and he was the modern military guy. I mean, I'm gonna be, from what I understand, their version of Thrawn is not the same Thrawn from the Heir to the Empire trilogy written by Timothy Zahn, which has been heralded as the sequel trilogy that never got made.
Yeah.
That was what people had been, if they were ever going to make a sequel trilogy to Star Wars and this as sequels, people were like Luke Skywalker, Heir to the Empire, Han, Luke, and Leia, with extra characters and dealing with Admiral Thrawn and the continuation of the dismantling and the last vestige of the Empire being held by this just incredible commander and strategist of Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah.
But they kind of talk him up as this like boogeyman, this supernatural guy. Oh, we have to go to take this ancient map. It was my same problem I had with Rise of Skywalker, where they had an ancient Sith dagger made thousands of years ago to look through an eyeglass of a destroyed Death Star that was made 30 years ago. One of these things is way older than the other. It shouldn't have been able to look up immediately on it. If it was like a data disk, like, we found a data disk and has the whereabouts of him, and we need to get the data disk to know where Thrawn's location is, that would make sense to me. It would still be contrived, but it would be a similar. As the way it stands, this feels like they're just rehashing Treasure Planet.
Hold on, let me see real quick. Let me catch up with the chat real quick and see what they're saying. Rating for maturity says Sabine. I guess he's mentioning her. Just seems depressed to him. Yeah. Just one good said catching out with rebels, so that's it, huh? They some type of rebel squad. Mentioning Dusk's point about going back, like watching the original Lord of the Rings and kind of getting tips for that. He says the original Star Wars was a nightmare. They actually were in sand or snow.
It was a disaster.
He also said all the worlds feel like they have the same weather temperature, and no one hardly sweats since they shoot in the volume, which is he's talking about the technology, that they use with like the Mandalorian, all that stuff. Like what's it called? What's the official name for it? The
volume.
Oh, that's it.
It is literally the volume.
Yeah,
they create a similar temp and scenario so that the sets are basically localized, so that they can shoot multiple different sets inside of a localized area, the volume, to keep the same temperature and all that going on. And but because of that, you lose a lot of the grit, you lose a lot of the reality. It's like a lukewarm medium to the problem that I had with the prequel trilogy, which is everything is too sterile and too CGI. Yeah. This is, we have some stuff, and some stuff is kind of made in it, and you're like, yeah, but you haven't completely fixed the problem. You need to go over a little bit more, be in real locations a bit more. You need that grit, or else it doesn't look like a dusty cantina if you're just in a nice temperature area that looks pretty bougie.
Yeah. Like an Andor. Andor
is the location. Andor is the only one of so far that I have seen where the sets feel like they actually were in a world, and the details are actually there. And you can say whatever you want about Andor, whether you liked it or not, or felt like it was kind of Star Warsy or not. I can't deny the sets. I can't deny the acting. I can't deny the soundtrack. I can't deny the effects. To me, that was the one show so far that actually took a damn chance and tried to make something. And I think mostly succeeded. The problem is
nobody watched it.
Nobody watched it because there's so much crappy Star Wars stuff that's came out, or subpar Star Wars stuff that buried it. So by the time it came out, if it had been The Mandalorian season 1, then season 2, and then nothing, and then Andor, I think that would have done gangbusters. People were like, oh shoot, that's incredible, and then you could do whatever you want. But I think the Book of Boba Fett killed it for a lot of people, and then a few other shows. You're like, man,
Rise of Skywalker, because that came out before.
Rise of Skywalker really killed the a lot of people's enthusiasm with the whole thing, and
And also Kenobi. Kenobi was not everything.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Kenobi was not everything it could have been. That was
No, not
like
even close.
if
It
it
was
was
it was a
yeah
2 hour movie, not a great 2 hour movie,
yeah
stretched into 6 hours.
yeah. If
Yeah.
if like there's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
Moses Ingram and her performance. The idea of bringing in a brand new character and wanting audiences to care about this character when we're all here for Kenobi, Anakin, and Vader, that was the mistake. Like,
Yeah.
why is there a brand new character that you want us to care about when we're all here for these guys?
Yeah.
And also, Hayden Christensen was like vastly underutilized for like
Oh, significantly
coming
underutilized.
back. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, with these first two episodes, I'm interested to see where things go. I think it's a stronger start to most of these shows than like Kenobi or Boba Fett. I hope it ends well. I mean, this is 8 episodes, so another kind of short order type series. Can they, do well with these plot lines, wrap them all up? That's always the big concern with these short series. Um, yeah, I don't really know because Andor had what 10 or 13 episodes.
12.
12. They had 12.
Yeah,
So that I think
fantastic.
so that was an efficient amount of time. I think 12 episodes to really tell a story. I mean, if you think your story can't go past that, then that's fine. But it just seems like they're just going like, okay, everybody, you just get 8 or 6 or whatever, and that's even with the Marvel shows too. And I think that with these shows, yeah, that seems to be a big problem. With Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, I got to see more of her to really get. I think she's not terrible, but I feel like I have to see more of her when she does, and to see if it will kind of be her series. And with Sabine, the actress who plays her, I think she's fine. I think the little kind of introduction we get of her was a little bit too much like they said, rebel without a cause type situation, with her, driving down that highway and everything like that. I thought that was kind of a little corny. I don't know if it's because Dave Filoni, there's some, maybe he's just a really good cartoon guy and writing that, but when it comes to live action translating to that maybe it's a little bit of a disconnect there. But this is his thing. This is his baby. He created this character. He's been a huge influential force in Star Wars. With a lot of these animated stuff and now the live action stuff.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that, but I'm gonna go around final thoughts and to see if you guys are gonna continue all the way through there. Chris, final thoughts of Ahsoka, everything like that. You're gonna finish the series.
So yeah, the first two episodes, they are definitely an epilogue. I wasn't like expecting it to end where like the way it ended, where like with the recreation of the final sequence of Rebels. But as an epilogue, it's great. Going forward, if we can continue down the same tone and stay Filoni, George Lucas told him everything he needs to know about writing a Star Wars story. Uh, everything from season 7 of the Clone Wars to Dooku's arc in Tales of the Jedi to everything he um, consulted with Mandalorian. He knows Star Wars, and I think I said the same thing I said about Kenobi. If done right, if executed, the way it could be and should be, it has the potential to be one of the best Star Wars stories told. But we'll see. I'm definitely gonna watch all the way through because so far I am enjoying it.
Dusk.
Well, I'm gonna have to finish it because we have to, and it's a podcast. Other than that, if I wasn't, probably not. Honestly, I've seen enough Star Wars. I've seen enough of Disney Star Wars to have my fill and then some. I know what I'm going to go into. I know it's going to have decent visuals. Everyone's going to be trying, but the material's just not going to be there. It's going to have special effects and kind of be an issue. My problem is I respect Dave Filoni. I do. I truly do. I respect the guy. But he's always been weirdly, kind of like George, he's always been a rebel. George, the biggest person who Dave Filoni had to curtail to, and it always frustrated him, was the lore master for Star Wars. There were lore masters for Star Wars, and he would always butt heads with the lore masters because the lore master is, no, that doesn't make any sense. No, that's not exactly how that happens. And he always hated him. And now he's gotten his chance to finally do everything he wanted to do because he doesn't have to worry about lore masters anymore. He is a lore master and he gets to do his own thing. And I've seen what he's done. and there's two sides to Dave Filoni. There's the side who definitely loves Star Wars. He loves it. He loves it to death. And I think he loves it too much. I think he's unfortunately blind to his love of it, where there needs someone to tell Dave no. There needs someone to tell him, hey, like, this is a good idea, but let's do it like this. Let's pull back a bit. Because I've seen what he's done with his other projects, and I've seen him jump many a shark when he's been given the full controls. So, with all that knowing, I'm gonna keep myself an open mind. I always do. I always try. But I've seen the patterns, and if you're here for us by the end, I don't want to say I told you so, but I just want it on the record. If I'm wrong, I will admit how wrong I am. I will happily admit how wrong I am. But if it goes the way I think it's going to go, well, I told you so.
No problem.
Yeah, I'd love to have Chris on. Back when the show wraps up, I'd love to have you on for that.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a better start than most of these shows have. Lucky Dog Podcast made a good point when he says most of these Star Wars shows that start well end well, but the middle will get a little sus. There, I don't know. I thought Andor was pretty strong throughout, though. I don't think there was really. I mean, there were some
Love
moments in
Andor.
Andor where it was kind of little dull moments, but I still thought it was strong throughout most of its run. But yeah, but as Dusk's point, like Radiant from Maturity says, he does love it too much, and he keeps bringing it back. Jar Jar and Clone Wars. Yeah, I think Dave Filoni and Tony Gilroy, who did Rogue One, and then he also did Andor. I think both of them would make a good combination to be heading up Star Wars, because both of them.
Someone needs to tell him. Someone needs a third party to tell them no. Sometimes they need someone they can trust to tell them at least no or hold on. I do agree with Lucky Dog, though. This would have made a better cartoon. I think
that was rated M for Maturity.
Rated M. Sorry, I agree with him wholeheartedly. I think this was a cartoon. This would be much better fare, which I think is strange, because Rebels was already a niche of a niche within Star Wars, and then to base a whole show based on characters from that show that not many people saw, and to continue that story, that's quite a lot to put on this.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was that big of an audience for Rebels. Like, it's liked enough by some people and derived by others, where they're like, oh, I like Clone Wars. Even the people who have problems with Clone Wars respects Clone Wars to some extent for what it had to do. And those same people do not like Rebels. They're like, what is this?
There's definitely a larger fan base for Clone Wars. There's more love for Clone Wars. 7 seasons, started in 2008. It gave us the clones who we all love. Yeah.
Delta Squad.
The
Night
Rex,
Sisters,
Commander Cody, the Night Sisters.
Maul's actually whole character mostly.
The Darksaber, Maul's back. Bo-Katan is introduced.
They actually made Anakin a likable character who actually had wants and desires, and you understood eventually how he got to the dark side.
Yeah.
And I want to add one last thing, personally speaking. Ahsoka Tano was not well liked when she was first added.
No,
like a lot of people retroactively go, "Oh no, she was great." No, she was like they hated her ass.
Sky Guy.
Yeah,
Sky Guy was horrible.
Yeah, Sky was horrible.
Well, it wasn't witty. Wasn't cute. That was a terrible joke. Terrible pun for Anakin. It was cringy.
It was terrible. Her movie introduction. They did like a brief movie to the Clone Wars series. It was she was not well received.
No.
But they took the problems that people have with her character and addressed it throughout the show and showed her growth till eventually over time she became a well-loved character because they did those steps. But no, a lot of people forget now in hindsight how terrible. If you watch those first episodes, she's annoying as shit. Like, she really is not well likable. She's just a kitty character in the show that roll your eyes. But I mean, that's what you get when George Lucas walks into a room and says, "All right, so anyways, Anakin has a Padawan." They're like, "No, he doesn't," and he just looks at everybody and goes, "What did you say?" And then literally, apparently, he did that. He just walked in and he just told the lore masters and the writers, like, "Figure it out, make Daddy proud." As he did with many of his projects. He would just walk it. He would look at people, know their potential, and just go, make Daddy proud, figure it out. And they did. They made Daddy proud.
Yeah. Ahsoka, she grew to, I mean, like you said, a lot of people hated her at first, and she grew to be a very popular character in Star Wars. But now I don't know if that's turning now or what. I don't know. People are weird, but I don't know if that's turning, shaping differently now. But So well, we'll be back, and when the whole series is done, we'll do a recap on the whole series. So in 6 weeks, I'll come back and review that.